Give us the keys to your house. Your brother and his pregnant wife are moving in today, Mom said. My 6-year-old daughter looked at me and asked where we were supposed to live. Mom simply shrugged. You can rent a small apartment. I smiled and calmly said, all right. What I didn't tell her was that I had already sold the house to a developer at 7:00 a.m. The next morning, a demolition crew showed up and told my brother he had 30 minutes to leave before the bulldozer started. Give us your house keys. Your brother and his pregnant wife are moving in today, my mother said casually, as if she were simply asking me to pass the salt. Then she pushed an empty packing box into my arms. For several seconds, I stood in the middle of my own living room, holding the box against my chest and wondering if I had heard her correctly. Behind her, my younger brother, Derek, leaned against the doorway with his thick arms crossed over his mechanic's uniform. His wife, Paige, stood beside him, one hand resting dramatically on her pregnant stomach. My 6-year-old daughter, Lily, looked up from the carpet where she had been drawing. Daddy, she asked, where are we going to live? The room suddenly went quiet. My mother glanced at Lily as though her question was an inconvenience. You and your father can rent a small apartment, she said with a shrug. There are only 2 of you. Derek and Paige need the space more. Lily's face fell. But this is my room. You'll have another room, my mother replied impatiently. Derek gave a quiet laugh, probably a smaller one. My mother smiled at him. I looked around the house. The cream-colored walls Lily and I had painted together. The staircase where she loved to sit and read. The kitchen doorway covered with pencil marks showing how much she had grown every year. The backyard where we had buried her goldfish beneath the cherry tree. My family saw square footage. I saw the life I had rebuilt after my wife died. You understand, don't you? Paige said, rubbing her stomach. The baby will be here in 4 months. We can't raise a child in a 2-bedroom rental. You currently live in a 3-bedroom rental, I said. Derek's expression immediately hardened. The 3rd room is filled with my tools. Then move the tools. Those are a man's tools, Harold. They aren't toys. There it was, that same familiar tone. Derek worked with his hands, so according to my family, his job was real, important, and respectable. I was the chief commercial analyst for Frostwell Ice Cream, one of the largest frozen dessert companies in the country. I handled pricing models, sales forecasts, factory expansion projections, and retail contracts worth millions. But to my family, I just played with candy. At almost every family dinner, Derek joked that I spent my days counting sprinkles. My father called me the ice cream boy. My mother often told relatives that Derek had a respectable career while I sat behind a computer making charts about children's desserts. They never mentioned that my so-called childish job paid nearly 3 times what Derek earned, and they certainly never mentioned how much of that money I had used to help them over the years. I looked down at the packing box in my arms, then I smiled. All right, Derek blinked. My mother looked surprised. What? I shrugged. All right, you're not going to argue? Derek asked. No, I placed the box on the floor. When do you want the keys? Now, Derek answered quickly. I walked over to the small bowl near the front door, took out the old spare set of keys, and dropped them into his palm. Paige let out a relieved breath. I knew you'd do the right thing. Lily ran toward me and wrapped both arms around my waist. Daddy, I don't want to leave. I rested my hand on her hair. It's okay, sweetheart. We already have somewhere to go. That was the first moment my mother looked suspicious. You do? Yes. Where? You'll find out. She narrowed her eyes, but Derek had already started giving orders. He told Paige to call the movers. Then he told my mother that he wanted the master bedroom. He walked through my house, pointing at the furniture he planned to keep. The dining table can stay, he said. The couch too. Harold probably won't have room for them in some little apartment. I said nothing. I didn't tell them that the furniture had already been sold. I didn't tell them that Lily's clothes, books, photographs, and favorite toys were already packed in my car and in a storage unit. And I definitely didn't tell them that 3 hours earlier, I had signed the final closing documents selling the house to Wexler Urban Development. At 7:00 the next morning, the demolition crews were scheduled to arrive. The family bank, my family's contempt for my work, had always been strange because they depended so heavily on the money it produced. When I first joined Frostwell, I was a junior analyst earning less than Derek made at the garage. That changed quickly. I discovered that I was good at finding patterns other people overlooked. I could look at thousands of sales figures and understand why strawberry products were failing in one region while selling out in another. I designed a forecasting model that reduced waste at 3 factories. Later, I helped negotiate a supermarket contract that became one of Frostwell's most profitable accounts. Within 8 years, I had become the company's chief commercial analyst. My parents never really understood what I did. They also never made an effort to. At one birthday dinner, my father raised his beer and said to Derek, who actually works for a living, everyone laughed. That same afternoon, I had transferred $6,000 to cover my parents' overdue mortgage payments. Another time, Derek slapped me on the shoulder and joked, "Careful, Harold. Don't strain yourself lifting all those jelly beans." That same week, I had paid for a new hydraulic lift at his garage after his credit application was rejected. He promised he would repay me within a year. 4 years later, I hadn't received a single payment. When Paige and Derek got married, I paid the deposit for their reception venue. When they wanted a honeymoon, I bought their plane tickets. When Derek's truck needed a new transmission, he called me before he even called his insurance company. Family helps family, my mother always said. But in our family, the help only ever seemed to travel in one direction. After my wife, Anna, died in a car accident, I thought things might finally change. For the first few weeks, my parents brought food. My mother stayed with Lily while I handled the funeral arrangements. Derek sat beside me during the service. Then the bills started arriving again. 3 months after Anna's death, my father called to say they needed a new boiler. "I know you're going through a difficult time," he said, "but we can't make it through winter without heating." I paid for it. 2 weeks later, Derek asked me for money to settle a debt with a parts supplier. I paid that too. I told myself that staying useful would keep me connected to my family. Deep down, I was afraid that if I stopped solving their problems, I would discover they had no other reason to call me. That fear kept me generous long after generosity had turned into self-destruction. Lily noticed it before I did. One evening when she was 5, she saw me transferring money to Derek through my banking app. "Why do you always give Uncle Derek money?" she asked. "Because he needs help." She looked at me for a moment. "Does he help us?" The question embarrassed me because I couldn't answer it. The final crack came when Derek and Paige announced the pregnancy. We were having dinner at my parents' house. Paige stood beside the table holding an ultrasound photograph while everyone cheered. I hugged them both. I meant it when I said I was happy for them. Then Derek cleared his throat. "We're going to need a bigger place." My mother looked directly at me. I should have understood immediately. Instead, I asked, "Have you started looking?" "We have," Paige said, "but houses are expensive." "Everything is expensive," I replied. My father grunted. "Not for everyone." I ignored the comment. Over the next 2 months, the hints slowly turned into demands. My mother sent me listings for houses near hers. Derek started asking how much equity I had in my house. Paige talked constantly about wanting a nursery, a home office, and a garden. Then one Sunday, my mother finally said it plainly. "You should give Derek your house." I laughed because I honestly thought she was joking. No one else laughed. "Give him my house, you don't need all that space," she said. "Lily is only a child. She still needs somewhere to live. You could rent." Derek leaned back in his chair. "Or buy a condo closer to the city. Isn't that where computer people like living?" I stared at him. "You want me to give you a house worth $400,000? You still owe money on it," he said. "So technically it isn't worth that much. And technically you still owe me $38,000. His expression immediately darkened. My mother slapped her palm against the table. "Don't humiliate your brother." I answered his financial argument with another financial fact. "You always have to make everything about numbers," she snapped. "I'm an analyst, you analyze ice cream." Derek laughed so hard he almost choked on his beer. I looked at my parents and finally understood something. They didn't simply prefer Derek. They genuinely believed he deserved what I had. His work was physical, so they considered it honorable. Mine happened behind a desk, so they assumed it was easy. Every promotion I earned looked like luck to them. Every dollar I saved seemed like money they could eventually give to someone else. That evening, I went home and stopped being sentimental. 2 days later, Wexler Urban Development contacted me. They were purchasing several properties on my street for a mixed-use development. Most of the homeowners had already accepted their offers. Mine was one of the final houses they needed. Their first offer was generous. Their second offer was impossible to refuse. The amount covered my remaining mortgage, gave me a substantial profit, and included a relocation bonus if I could move out quickly. I signed a preliminary agreement. Then I bought a smaller but beautiful house near Lily's school. It had 3 bedrooms, a secure garden, and a bright little study where I could work from home. I purchased it through a limited company my financial advisor had helped me establish. My family wouldn't be able to find the address through a simple property search. For the next 3 weeks, I quietly moved our important belongings. I told Lily we were going on an adventure. I told my family nothing. The night before closing, my mother called. "Come home early tomorrow," she ordered. "We're moving Derek in." I almost warned her. Almost. Then she added, "And don't make this difficult. For once in your life, do something useful for your brother." So I let them come. Moving day arrived. By 6:00 that evening, Derek's belongings had taken over the driveway. His tool cabinets were stacked beside the garage. Paige was directing movers as they carried boxes labeled nursery, master closet, and Paige's office. My mother stood in the kitchen placing red stickers on my furniture. "Derek wants this. Paige needs that. This will be perfect for the baby." Nobody asked what Lily needed. I took her upstairs while they continued arguing about rooms. Her bedroom was almost empty now. All that remained was a sleeping bag, a small suitcase, and the drawing she had been working on. It showed a pink house underneath a bright yellow sun. 2 stick figures stood outside holding hands. One was tall, one was small. Above them she had written, "Daddy and me home." I knelt beside her. "Are you ready to see the new house?" Her eyes widened. The real house with my own room?" "Yes." "Can I paint it purple?" "Within reason." She thought about it for a moment. Apparently purple was reasonable. I laughed for the first time that day. We carried her suitcase downstairs. My mother was standing near the front door. "You're leaving already?" "Yes." "I've taken everything I need." She looked around at the nearly empty walls. "You moved things without telling us." "I moved my things." Derek came down the stairs. "The master bedroom closet still has some of Anna's boxes in it. Paige needs the space." My chest tightened when I heard my late wife's name coming from his mouth. "I'll take care of them tonight." "Fine." I walked past him, collected the final sealed container filled with Anna's photographs and letters, and placed it carefully in my car. Derek followed me outside. "You're taking the lawn mower." "I sold it." "The grill?" "Sold." "The patio furniture?" "Sold." His face twisted with anger. "You knew we were moving in." "I knew you had decided to move in." "What's the difference? You'll understand tomorrow." He grabbed my arm. "Don't play games with me." I looked down at his hand until he finally let go. "You've spent years telling everyone that you work with your hands while I play with computers. Use those skilled hands to unpack." He stepped closer. "You think you're better than me because you have money?" "No, I think I'm more responsible than you because I don't demand other people's property." My mother rushed outside. "Stop provoking your brother." He grabbed me. "He's under pressure." "So am I." "You don't know pressure," Derek said. "You sit in an air-conditioned office all day." I opened the rear door for Lily. "You're right. Forecasting $800 million in annual sales must be much easier than changing brake pads." Derek stared at me. For once, he couldn't figure out whether I was joking. I got into the car. My mother tapped on the window. "At least give us the security code." "There isn't one anymore." "What does that mean?" "It means you should all get some sleep." I drove away. In the rearview mirror, I could see them standing in front of the house they believed they had taken from me. Lily stayed quiet for several minutes. Then she asked, "Daddy, are they going to live there forever?" "No." "How long?" I glanced at the clock on the dashboard. "About 13.5 hours. At 6:42 the next morning, my phone started vibrating. The first call was from Derek. I ignored it. The second came from my mother, then Paige, then my father. At 6:48, Derek sent me a message. "Why are there fences around the street?" At 6:53, "Some guy says we have to leave." At 6:55, "Call me now." At exactly 7:00, I answered. Derek was already shouting before I could say anything. "What the hell did you do?" In the background, I could hear engines, reversing alarms, and workers shouting instructions to each other. "Good morning." "Don't good morning me. There are bulldozers outside." "I know." The man wearing a helmet spoke again. "Sir, this house belongs to Wexler Development." "That's correct." There was a long silence, then his voice became quieter. "What? I sold the house." "You couldn't have." "I did." "When?" "The closing was completed yesterday. You gave me the keys. You demanded the keys." "I gave you an old spare set. You let us move in." "No, you moved yourselves in." A different voice suddenly came through the phone. "Sir, you now have 29 minutes. Derek covered the phone and screamed something at the site manager, then he came back on the line. "They say demolition starts at 7:30. That was the schedule in the final documents. My things are in there. Then I suggest you stop calling me and start carrying them out. You set us up." "No. I sold my property. You tried to take it without asking. You said all right. I agreed not to argue. That doesn't mean I gave you ownership. My mother grabbed the phone from him. Harold, stop this immediately. Stop what? Call those people and tell them there has been a mistake. There hasn't. We spent the entire night here. That was unwise. Her voice rose into a shriek. Your brother's pregnant wife is standing in the street. Then someone should help her get to the car. How could you do this to your own family? I looked across the breakfast table at Lily. She was sitting in our new kitchen, eating cereal in pajamas covered with tiny stars. Yesterday, my daughter asked where she would live, I said. You shrugged and told her to rent a small flat. That was different. Yes, I said quietly. It was different because this time it was happening to her. Harold. You were perfectly comfortable making a 6-year-old homeless as long as Derek benefited. We weren't making her homeless. You have money, so does Derek. He has a child coming. I already have. A child? My mother had no answer. In the background, the site manager called out, 22 minutes. Then I heard my father, give me the phone. His voice came through, deep and controlled. Son, you've made your point. I wasn't making a point. I was completing a real estate transaction. Call the developer. The developer owns the house. Buy it back. I laughed. With what? You have money. I had a house. Now I have a different house and a healthy investment account. A different house. My mother must have heard him because she immediately started shouting. You already bought another house? Yes. Where? That information is private. Derek grabbed the phone again. You planned this whole thing. I planned to sell my house and move my daughter somewhere peaceful. You planned everything else too. You knew Mom was going to make you give us the keys. Mom cannot force me to give away property that belongs to me. You should have warned us. I did warn you. For years, about what? Every time I asked you to repay a loan. Every time I told you I was tired of paying for your life. Every time I told you Lily came first. You laughed at me every single time. A loud crashing noise suddenly came through the phone. What was that? I asked. One of the movers dropped Paige's dresser. 22 minutes. You think this is funny? No, I think it's expensive. There's a difference. He started swearing. I ended the call. For the next half hour, my phone continued lighting up with calls. I didn't answer a single one. At 7:31, the demolition supervisor sent me a photograph. I had asked him to confirm that the property was completely clear. My former house stood behind a temporary fence. Derek's boxes were piled along the pavement. My parents' cars were parked at awkward angles. Paige was sitting in the passenger seat of Derek's truck, crying. In the foreground, the bulldozer had lowered its steel blade. At 7:36, it pushed straight through the garage wall. I expected to feel sad. Instead, I felt relieved. That house had held beautiful memories of Anna. But it had also become a symbol of my family's belief that everything I worked for somehow belonged to them. Watching that wall collapse didn't destroy my memories, it destroyed their claim to them. The emergency family meeting that evening, my parents called an emergency family meeting at their house. For a moment, I considered refusing. Then I decided Lily deserved to hear me stand up for us. We arrived at 7:00. Derek was pacing around the living room. His uniform shirt was covered in dust. Paige sat on the couch with swollen, red eyes. My father stood beside the fireplace. My mother sat at the dining table with a folder placed directly in front of her. The second I walked through the door, Derek came toward me. You owe me $12,000. I took off my coat. For what? Damaged furniture, moving expenses, hotel costs. Lost work. You entered a property you didn't own without permission from its owner. You gave me keys to a house that wasn't yours anymore. You tried to trick me. You tried to steal my home. My mother slammed her hand against the table. That is enough, sit down. I stayed standing. Lily was holding my hand. My mother looked at her and suddenly softened her voice. Sweetheart, why don't you go into the kitchen? No, I said. Adults are talking. They were talking about her home. She stays, my father frowned. This isn't appropriate for a child. What wasn't appropriate, I replied, was telling her she could live in a tiny flat because her uncle wanted her bedroom. Paige started crying again. You don't understand what this stress is doing to my baby. I hope your baby is healthy, I said. And I also hope you learn not to build its future by taking something away from another child. Derek stepped forward. Don't talk to my wife like that, then don't use your wife's pregnancy as a weapon. My mother opened the folder. Inside were several printed spreadsheets. For a moment, I was actually impressed. We made a list, she said, of what the family needs from you to fix this. I stared at her. You made a list. First, you will pay for temporary housing for Derek and Paige. She pointed to the next page. Second, you will reimburse them for everything damaged this morning. Another page. Third, you will contribute to a down payment on a suitable house. Then she looked directly at me. And fourth, you will apologize. Lily squeezed my fingers. I started laughing. My mother's face immediately hardened. What is funny, you made a financial plan without asking the only person who is expected to pay for it. This is not the time for jokes. No, Mother, I reached into my bag. This is the first serious conversation we've had in years. I pulled out my own folder and placed it on the table. Then I began laying copies of bank transfers, loan agreements, receipts, and credit card statements across the table. Derek stopped pacing. My father's eyes moved slowly over the documents. What is this? Everything I've paid for this family during the last 9 years. I pointed to the first section. $38,000 for Derek's garage equipment and business debts. I moved to the next page. $14,000 for his wedding and honeymoon. Then I turned to the next set of documents, and that's only the beginning. $9,000 for vehicle repairs, rent shortages, and insurance. I turned toward my parents. $27,000 for your mortgage, boiler, roof, medical expenses, and holidays you said were emergencies. My mother's mouth fell open. You kept records. I'm an analyst, remember? Derek tried to sweep the papers aside. That doesn't mean anything. Those were gifts. The garage money was a signed loan. You said I could pay whenever I was able. You bought a fishing boat last summer. That was different. Everything is different when you want it to be. I took out one final document. This is formal notice that I am ending all financial support. I have canceled the automatic payment for Mom and Dad's property tax. I removed Derek as an authorized user from the fuel account. I closed the credit card page used for household emergencies. I have also instructed my attorney to begin collection on the garage loan. Paige stared at Derek. You said Harold gave you that money. He did. No, I said I lent it to him. Derek's face turned red. You would sue your own brother. I will use the same legal system I used to sell my own house. My father looked disgusted. You've become cold. No, I've become precise. Family isn't a business. Then stop sending me invoices. My mother stood. We gave you everything. You raised me. That was your responsibility. We supported your education. I had a scholarship and worked nights. We supported you when Anna died for 3 weeks. Then you asked me to pay for a boiler. Her eyes flashed. How dare you bring that up? How dare you demand my daughter's home? The room fell silent. Lily moved closer to me. I rested my hand on her shoulder. This is the last time any of you will treat her as less important than Derek, I said. You may mock my job. You may call me ice cream boy. You may tell yourselves that Derek is the hardworking son because grease stains are more impressive than spreadsheets, but the money you respected came from the job you ridiculed. Derek pointed at me. You sit around playing with candy while men like me keep the world running, and yet the man who plays with candy has been keeping your garage running. His hand dropped. I continued, you are 34 years old, you have a trade, a business, a wife, and a child coming. It is time for your life to be funded by your work rather than mine. Paige looked at him. How much do we owe Harold? He did not answer. How much? 38,000. He stared at the floor. Her face changed. It wasn't anger at me, it was realization. She stood slowly. You told me the garage was profitable. It will be. You told me the house was Harold's gift. Mom said I don't care what your mother said. My mother gasped. Paige turned toward her. You told us Harold had agreed he would have eventually. That is an agreement. Derek reached for Paige, but she pulled away. I'm going to my sister's, she said. Paige, don't do this. I spent last night moving into a house that was scheduled to be demolished because none of you bothered to ask the owner whether we were allowed to live there. She walked out. Derek glared at me as though I had destroyed his marriage, but I had not created his lies. I had merely stopped paying to hide them. My mother pointed toward the door. Get out. For the first time, those words did not hurt. I collected my documents gladly. After the dust settled, the next few months were quieter than any period of my adult life. My parents stopped calling after they realized guilt no longer worked. Derek's attorney contacted mine. We agreed on a repayment plan secured against his share of the garage. He had to sell the fishing boat, cancel several subscriptions, and take on more repair work. Apparently, working with his hands became much less prestigious when he had to do enough of it to pay his own bills. Paige stayed with her sister for 6 weeks. She eventually returned to Derek, but only after they attended financial counseling and he showed her every debt he had hidden. She also insisted that my mother stop interfering in their marriage. I did not become close to them. Boundaries were not punishment, but neither were they invitations. my parents had to refinance their home after losing my monthly support. They sold their expensive recreational vehicle and canceled a cruise. My father called me once. He did not apologize. He said, "Your mother has been very upset." I replied, "Lily was upset when you tried to take her home. That was never our intention. It was exactly your intention. You simply expected me to solve the consequences." He was quiet, then he asked, "Are you really going to keep us away from our granddaughter?" "I'm going to keep her away from anyone who teaches her that love means surrendering what belongs to her." He hung up. For the first time, I did not call back. Our new house quickly became home. Lily chose a pale lavender color for her bedroom. We planted strawberries in the garden. On the wall beside the kitchen doorway, I drew the first pencil line marking her height. She looked at it seriously. "Will this house get knocked down too?" "No, are you sure?" "Yes, because Grandma can't give it to Uncle Derek." I crouched in front of her. "Grandma cannot give away things that belong to us." Why did she think she could? The honest answer was complicated, so I gave her the simplest true one. Because I let people make decisions for me for too long. Why? Because I thought saying no would make me a bad person. She considered that. Did it? No. What did it make you? I smiled. Your dad. At Frostwell, my team celebrated the successful launch of a new product line I had helped develop. Small batch fruit ice creams aimed at adults rather than children. During the presentation, our chief executive raised a cup of blackberry vanilla ice cream. To Harold, she said, whose allegedly childish profession just generated the strongest quarterly growth in company history. My colleagues laughed. This time I laughed with them. The bonus I received was larger than Derek's remaining debt. I used part of it to establish an education fund for Lily. The rest I invested. I did not tell my family. 6 months after the demolition, I received an envelope from Wexler Development. Inside was a photograph of the completed project's foundation and a short note from the site supervisor. He had remembered the chaos that morning. Under the photograph, he had written, "Sometimes you have to clear the old structure before you can build something stronger." I placed the photograph in my office. A week later, Paige gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She sent me a picture and a brief message. "His name is Owen. I want you to know I'm sorry about the house." I believed what they told me because believing it was convenient. You were right to protect Lily. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied, "Congratulations. I hope Owen grows up knowing that being family never gives someone ownership of another person's life." She sent back one word, "Agreed." I still loved my family. That was the strange part. Setting boundaries had not erased the love. It had simply stopped love from being used as a key to my bank account, my house, and my daughter's future. For years, I believed my value came from what I provided: the mortgage payments, the emergency transfers, the equipment, the holidays, the house they eventually tried to take. But Lily never cared about any of those things. She cared that I read to her before bed, that I cut the crust off her sandwiches, that I knew purple was reasonable. One evening, as we ate ice cream on the back porch, she asked whether Uncle Derek still made fun of my job. "Probably, but you're the boss of ice cream numbers," something like that. "And Uncle Derek fixes cars." "Yes, both jobs sound important." I looked at her, surprised by the wisdom in her small face. "They are. Then why was he mean about yours?" Sometimes people make another person look small because they're afraid of feeling small themselves. She took another spoonful of chocolate ice cream. "That's silly." "It is." The sun disappeared behind the trees, filling the garden with golden light. For the first time in years, there was no upcoming family emergency waiting for my money, no brother demanding rescue, no mother deciding what I owed. No father measuring my manhood by the amount of dirt under my fingernails. There was only my daughter, our quiet house, and the life we had chosen. My family had ordered me to hand over my keys. I had smiled and said, "All right." They believed that meant I had surrendered. What they did not understand was that those keys opened a house that no longer belonged to me, and their control had worked exactly the same way. For years, I had been terrified to lock them out. Then I finally realized they had never owned the.
And the story, moral of the story, being family does not give anyone the right to take advantage of you. Helping the people you love is a good things, but you should never have to sacrifice your peace, your home, or your child's future just to keep others happy. Sometimes saying no does not make you selfish. It's mean you finally respect yourself and your own boundaries. What do you think? Was her old right to self the house and stand up to his family, or do you think he should have handled things differently? Share your opinion in the comments, and if you enjoy the story, don't forget to like, subscribe on, and turn on the notification bell for more edit stories. Thank you for watching.